I had people calling me right after we announced that we were closed out and sold out as far as registration, wanting to know if they could get in. It's like, we can put you on a 40-person waiting list, but let this be a lesson that when you see the registration open for any Montana Chamber of Commerce event, don't sit around and rub your chin very long wondering whether or not you should register. Get registered, because we're seeing this at all of our events. And so I'm going to kind of lead into that real briefly here by introducing the staff at the Montana Chamber of Commerce, and this is the real brawn and brains that makes events like this successful. And I'm going to start with Stacy Dorrington. She's standing in the door there in the red. She's the Director of Business Engagement. Stacy's responsible for putting together all of our events, all the logistics that come with that. Matt Olson is our Chief Strategy Officer. He's standing on the stage there in the back. Matt is in charge of our strategic vision and ensuring that it is implemented and executed. I see Diamond D. Durand. Hey, D, wave. How many years have you been with the Montana Chamber of Commerce now? 41 years? Right? D has been with the Montana Chamber of Commerce longer than some of you have been alive. James Easton, where's James at? Where's James? Oh, James over here. Come out here, James, for a second. He's over here behind the big banner. There he is. James is responsible for all of our workforce development and entrepreneurship work. And so we're really honored to have James on the Chamber staff as well. So thank you, James. Sheridan Johnson Hoyer, Director of Public Affairs. So you see Sheridan at the back there. Sheridan is wearing a couple of hats. She does not only our government affairs work, but she does a lot of our marketing and communications work. And Charles Robinson, General Counsel, standing over here in the Bobcat yellow tie, over there in the corner. Charles is our General Counsel and also leads our government affairs sort of work. So I wanted to make sure you all saw faces with names, so that over the course of the next 2 days, that if you have questions, you need any assistance with anything, this is the team that makes these sort of things come together, and they're here to make sure that this experience that you have here at the Montana Chamber of Commerce Business Days of the Capital is successful for you, that you get what you need out of this sort of an event, and that you're comfortable at all times. So I have to start by saying, what a game last night, right? I mean, talk about remarkable. And so I've had a couple people ask me today, it's like, were you there last night? Because it sounds like your voice was there. No, this is a voice that I received when I was at the Montana Club last night watching this on TV. And so it was an exciting game. Congratulations to the Montana State University Bobcats, my alma mater, and we couldn't be more proud. And I also know that I've got a lot of friends here, and we get a lot of support from the University of Montana. That's right, go Grizz. And I want to congratulate the Montana Grizzlies on an incredibly successful year. We knew, 3 weeks ago, when the Grizzlies and the Bobcats met for the Great Divide Battle 0.20 or 2.0, we knew that regardless of the outcome of that game, Montana was going to be represented on the national stage. And so congratulations to the state of Montana. It's more important than just the personal bragging rights and the pride that we take with our respective school. We have Montana on a national stage. And it matters to the students that are considering where they're going to go to their next college from around the country. It matters to the donors. It matters to the alma mater. We put Montana on a national stage last night. Over 2.5 million people from around the country watched that football game last night. 2.5 million. We know Montana has about 1 million. So I think it's probably safe to say there was 1.5 million people outside of the state of Montana watch that game. And so I think it's a personal point of pride for all of us that Montana has not one but two dominant football teams, two dominant colleges in the state of Montana, and that's nothing but good news for us. So congratulations again to the Montana State University Bobcats, National Champions 2025. I'd like to now introduce and just have the directors, the board of directors for the Montana Chamber Foundation. This is kind of our education arm of the Montana Chamber of Commerce, does our entrepreneurship and our workforce work. I've got several members of the board of directors here from the Montana Chamber Foundation. It's a smaller board than our Montana Chamber of Commerce board, but if you're on the Montana Chamber Foundation board, would you please stand? Ed, you may be. Here we go. Paul, Michael, great. Let's give these folks a round of applause for the work they do on behalf of workforce development and entrepreneurship. And now I'd like to turn to the Montana Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. These are the folks that represent the entire business community, make sure that this chamber staff, that we stay on track, that we are executing our strategic plan. We're working on behalf of the general business community as a whole. If you are a board member of the Montana Chamber of Commerce, please stand. Got a big group here. So as you all know, the Montana Chamber of Commerce is the state's largest business advocacy organization. We started in 1931. So in 2031, we're going to be celebrating our 100-year anniversary. We are the most respected organization in the state. And in 2016, the Montana Chamber of Commerce unveiled its first ever strategic plan. Prior to 2016, the Montana Chamber did not have a strategic plan. And it was recognized that we need to have a strategic plan, strategic guidance to grow Montana's economy, not for a single business sector or a specific company, but for the business community writ large. And how do we leverage the authority and the credibility of the state's largest business advocacy organization to grow Montana's economy for every business? And our business membership is very diverse. We have agriculture, natural resources, retail, manufacturing, finance, healthcare, high tech. And I've just listed off a few of them. And they are businesses throughout the entire state of Montana. And so how do we leverage that to grow the economy for the entire state of Montana? So we went to business leaders and asked them, what should we focus on as an organization to move the needle for Montana's economy? And business leaders in 2016 said that over the next 10 years, we want you to focus on these four areas. Business climate, things like taxes, regulations, judicial climate, legal environment, infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, access to high-speed internet and broadband. Third, workforce development. Think about that for a second and how visionary business leaders were in 2016, that they recognized that workforce development was going to be a significant headwind to the state of Montana over the course of the next 10 years. And look at where we are today as far as the workforce challenge compared to where we were in 2016. Business leaders were really looking over the horizon. And the fourth pillar, was entrepreneurship, and it was recognized as a strength of Montana's economy. That entrepreneurship is one of those issues or one of those strengths that we have as an organization that's creating wealth, and is creating wealth in both urban and rural parts of Montana. And how do we maintain our position as one of the top entrepreneurial states in the country, rather than just waking up every year and discovering that by some miracle we are? So we go at entrepreneurship with intention. So those were the four items, big topic areas that we focused on as far as our strategic plan. And it was called Envision 2026. Hence, it expires at the end of this year in 2026. So we've begun working on our next strategic plan, what is going to guide this organization as we go forward. And it's really important that we get it right, because the last legislative session, of the bills that the Montana Chamber of Commerce focused on that fell underneath those 4 pillars, we were 74% successful. No other organization in the state of Montana has that kind of a track record, has that kind of a success rate, both in the bills that we opposed and the bills that we supported. And so when we can focus on specific areas that improve Montana's economy, we have a track record that demonstrates that we can perform. And so getting it right is going to be really important. And so we're up to our ears right now and talking to business leaders, encouraging them to look over the horizon, to think big. What are going to be the big challenges? What are going to be big opportunities for the state of Montana over the course of the next 5 to 10 years? And we're starting to kind of see some things that are falling into place. We see business climate continues to be an issue, taxes, regulations. We're hearing a lot more talk about specifics around taxes. Like for the first time, we're hearing property tax as a significant headwind, a significant challenge for Montana's economy as we go forward. We're also hearing a new one that we didn't hear in 2016, and that's energy. We're hearing energy crop up over and over again, both as an opportunity and as a threat to Montana's economy. It's an opportunity if we get it right. We can dictate our future and will open up economic opportunities throughout the state of Montana. If we don't go at it with intention, the rest of the country will pass us by. And because of the barriers to entry for electricity generation, we'll never catch up. So these are some of the things that we're hearing. We would love to have your input as we continue through the rest of this year here in 2026 so that we can finish out this year with a strategic plan that looks us forward for the next 5 to 10 years on those issues that business leaders see that are both threats and opportunities. So thank you as we work with you, and we look forward to talking with you more about that over the course of the next 10 or 11 months. I am really blessed as the leader of this organization to have a board of directors that has been really supportive and very encouraging to the direction and the work that we're doing here. And I'm really blessed to have the chair of the Montana Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors who is really starting to engage a lot more and is really leading this board and as we look forward over the course of the next year. And Tony Rosanova has not only become a friend, but he's a mentor, and he is also the chair of the Montana Chamber of Commerce. Would you please welcome Tony Rosanova to the stage? He will be your MC for the rest of the event.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to repeat the appreciation the Chamber has to you guys coming and taking time out of your days, taking time out of your work weeks, taking time out of your lives, and joining us at events like this and sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your feedback. We don't have to agree, but when we don't communicate at all, we don't move forward. And if you don't take the time you're taking today and tomorrow, we don't get the opportunity to do that. So sincerely, we thank you, because this is impactful and we know that. But we also know that this kind of effort is how we move forward together instead of in opposition with each other. So I do want to ask you guys to take a minute and appreciate each other's time, because it is a really important aspect of this. And we tend to forget that. We tend to worry about what's going on back at the office. And the moments you're spending here with your peers and with other industries and with other employees and coworkers and founders really will make a difference. And so we do want to say thank you again. With that, I did want to spend a little bit of time just talking about Envision, because that strategic plan and the effort that the Chamber holds themselves accountable to has really allowed us to create focus, drive, and make an impact. And so with that in mind, the work that was done over the last 10 years has allowed the Chamber to really move forward. The work that we have to do next, specifically in the energy and infrastructure areas, the tax, tort, reform, regulatory areas. Those are the areas that we've talked about that will really significantly help, but they won't work if we don't link workforce, workplace skills that we can really count on from people. Housing, childcare issues are still issues in our state for our employers and for you guys every day. And then really the investment the foundation is making in entrepreneurship and youth careers. So the reason I'm re-highlighting them is there's a call to action for every chamber member, and that is to get involved in the ones that you feel like you can contribute to, or get involved in the ones that you know nothing about, so you know more about it. And that call to action is exemplified by the fact that all of you are here today. But there's committees, there's meetings, there's subgroups that need your voice. And we really would love to have your voice show up there. Because the chamber has put forth the high-level strategic plan. We need you guys to help us detail that out. Because if we don't do things that are valuable to you, then we start to lose our movement, and we start to lose our impact. So we want to make sure that you are heard. And when you say, what does the chamber do for me today? Or when somebody says, why are you a member of the chamber? We want you to have something that you believe in that's affected your business or your passion to say we're making a difference because of this group. And so I would really love to ask you to think about that over the course of the year. And if there's not enough information, ask us. We'll get you every bit of information we have. So with that in mind, Todd did discuss the idea that the chamber's been in the business community as a force since 1931. And this event and the Governor's Cup and other events year in and year out are where we get together to share. But we can't do that without your guys' help. And you guys know that we need sponsorships. And so we wanted to just really spend just a couple minutes and thank some of our sponsors. Because this doesn't happen without your help. And so of course, we'd love to start with the list and the powerhouse sponsor in Google. We'd just really like to thank the commitment they've made to the chamber and to this event. And we'd love to just rattle through a few of them, and I'd love to talk about each of them, that's not why you guys came. You guys didn't come to hear the sponsors, but we do owe them a debt of gratitude. So at the platinum level, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Montana, Boeing, Burlington Northern and Santa Fe, Cross Harbor Capital Partners, First Interstate Bank, Government of Alberta, Lone Mountain Land Company, Montana Department of Commerce, Montana State Fund, Northwest Energy, Republic Services, Stockman Bank, the University of Montana, Valley Bank of Helena. We thank all of you at the platinum level for what you've done to help us be here. When you hear those names, those are names that are foundational across Montana. Those are names that are contributing to Montana's economy on a regular basis. They're hiring our students, our children. They're growing this state. And we truly do appreciate it. So would you mind helping me give them a round of applause to say thank you? One of my jobs is to keep us on track, and I'm going to give you a couple of things just related to logistics. There are amazing speakers today. We're not going to spend too much time talking about their bios, but in your agendas, you can find more about them, and we'd ask you to look at that. There will be Q&As with each one of these, but we know we're not going to get every question answered. That's why the networking events or breaks are put into place. We want to make sure that you have a chance to meet people. Every person here is approachable. Just walk up and introduce yourself, ask your question, and let's see if we can't get the answers that you guys are looking for. When the Q&A happens, there will be members of the chamber staff walking around with microphones. Just raise your hand, stand up, we will get a microphone to you and make sure that you get your voice heard. With that, it's time to move to the program. During the 2025 legislative session, Senator Ken Bogner sponsored Senate Bill 535, expanding on 2023 bill also sponsored by Senator Bogner, dubbed the Right to Try. The bill made Montana the first state to license and oversee experimental treatment centers. Join me in welcoming Senator Bogner, Greg Mieselbach of Shelburne Group, and moderator Jesse Luther of the Taylor Luther Group to just take us through a conversation about the right to try.
Thanks, Tony. Oh, that was loud. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for the great introduction. I am Jesse Luther, sitting up here with the stars of the show, Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Ken Bogner, and Greg Mieselbach, who represents several biotech companies and is also the vice chair of Montana Bio. You can read more about them in their bios in your pamphlets. So I know that Tony mentioned we're talking about Senate Bill 535, which was some unique legislation, first in the nation to pass. And we're just sort of curious where the audience is at, and has anybody, I see some legislators, so I should get some hands, but how many of you have actually heard of Senate Bill 535 or the right to try? Okay, more than I was expecting. That's awesome. So we're going to go through some of the basics, I think, to catch up folks that maybe don't know what it's about, and answer some questions that may be on your minds, and then we'll take a few minutes at the end to take questions from the audience. So first, I'm going to start with Senator Bogner and ask you to talk a little bit about the genesis of the work that you started in 2023 in this particular bill, what you were seeking to accomplish.
Thanks, Jesse. I believe Senate Bill 535 is the most exciting bill that came out of the 2025 legislature, both because of the possibilities to change how we do healthcare in the U.S. and business opportunities that it could provide to the state of Montana. So it's exciting that some people have heard of it, and thanks everyone for being here to hear about it today. But really, it's a few years in the making. Let's go back to when I first ran for office. I ran on a platform of rural economic development and how to bring the next generation into our small rural communities and take rural Montana into the future. And that was successful, and I got elected. And as I got elected, I started asking more and more of the people of these communities, how can you help? Can you be mentors? And can you invest in the communities? And a lot of the answers I started getting back was, I'd love to, I just don't have the health that I used to. I'd love to give my disposable income to invest in the future, but I'm spending too much money on healthcare costs. And that really got me thinking, what can I do through healthcare to help with rural economic development? I don't have healthcare background, so I started asking around. Had a former colleague, senator, who had worked on medical right to try when it came through the Montana Senate before it was signed federally. And medical right to try is the ability to try experimental medicine that is phase 1 FDA approved, but not have full approval if you're terminally ill. That passed through enough states that it was sent to Congress, and President Trump signed that bill in 2018. And that individual, former colleague, said, you should think about doing something around that. And so I started thinking. And also had a personal experience that was the light bulb moment for me. When I was 12 years old, I went into a school sports physical, and they found an irregular heartbeat, and I had a hole in between chambers of my heart, atrial septal defect. And to get that corrected, I had a procedure done that when I was 12 that wasn't fully FDA approved. And I thought, let's incorporate that into medical right to try. And why should you have to be terminally ill to get medicine that you want or need? So I introduced a bill in 2023 that expanded medical right to try, that you didn't have to be terminally ill to try phase 1 FDA approved drugs. It passed, and no one used it. And they wanted to. The doctors came to me and said, we like the intent here. We don't feel like there's enough for us to actually utilize the bill. Hospitals said we don't feel comfortable enough to use it. We just don't know if the state's going to enforce it, what that looks like, if the federal government is going to be okay with this law. So we need more. And that is what led to Senate Bill 535, which we passed in this last legislative session.
Thank you. So talking a little bit about the legislative process, everyone refers to it as sausage making. It is always a little bit interesting. And this particular bill had kind of an interesting path through the legislature, but what were some of the highlights or things that you most enjoyed in working on this piece of legislation through session?
I enjoyed how innovative it was, and that people had buy-in from the 2023 bill, and they wanted to see this work, and they believed that we could be first in the nation state to accomplish or to change healthcare in the country. And that was really exciting to see, that there was a desire to make Montana the first in the nation to start tackling healthcare in a different manner than it's done in the past. So that was very motivating.
Thanks. So to dig in a little bit further into some of the details of the bill, what did 535 had that was missing from the 2023 legislation? Why did we need this to help attract businesses to the state?
So as I mentioned, there were some questions about where it could be done and who could do it. So Senate Bill 535 creates a new type of healthcare facility that allows for these phase 1 FDA-approved drugs to be administered. And it gives the Montana Department of Health and Human Services the ability to create rules to license these facilities to allow further administration.
Fantastic. I'm going to switch it up and go to Greg here for the next one. Greg, you work with a lot of these biotech companies and have on a national level. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what is the opportunity for the state of Montana in this arena now that this legislation is passed?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. I think since the bill has passed, especially in this past legislature, we have seen an influx of companies across the United States, internationally, interested in Montana. It has opened up, I think, a new class of business, if you will, these experimental treatment centers that really are a trickle-down effect to the state. And so when you open and we'll talk about this a little bit, when the rules come out and an experimental treatment center will open, what they're going to do is license in a technology. So when I say technology, that means a drug in phase 1 in this case, or phase 2 or even past from a company, let's say that's in Boston or California. And we have the ability as Montanans or patients coming from outside of Montana to try that experimental treatment. And it's really an opportunity for new companies to come to Montana, for new clinics to come to Montana to hire folks, to hire contractors, to build these labs, to do research, and really to have some of these exciting drugs come out of the state of Montana. And so I see it as a huge upswing. There is massive interest. I think clarity is important, and that's why it's thanks to Jesse and Ken and their hard work, we're looking forward to the rules coming out and figuring out how to do this right, because ultimately getting Montanans as patients better access to new and innovative medicines that are under development, like the one that Ken had that probably saved your life. That's what the goal of this was. And so the interest is extreme, and it's exciting, quite frankly.
Fantastic. Are there any particular types of experimental treatments that you're aware of that are maybe looking at the state? Or I think just to give some folks in the audience what we're talking about, if you have any examples or ideas.
Sure. You'll see that there's been a dearth of a lot of these clinics going to South America to do some of these experimental treatments in Mexico. Some of them are stem cells, some of them are not. Some of them are repurposed drugs that are safe and effective but have a different indication. So, I think that the types of therapies coming in here are for long-term care, whether that be a cancer designation, whether that be pediatric cancer. It's really, the best part of the bill is it's phase 1, and phase 1 will apply to any class of drug for any indication. And indication in pharmaceutical word is what disease you have. So any indication can come in here. So really the opportunity is for us to go around and say, make sure that everybody knows about this opportunity and that we're helping the clinics open so that they can license in these drugs. Because the way that this will shake out is not a pharmaceutical company coming to Montana and building, a big office building with 1,000 people. What's going to happen is these clinics will be employers of hundreds of people, and then licensing those technologies from a pharmaceutical company, or biotech company is probably a better word, that has a therapy for a cancer or for muscular dystrophy or something like that. And when it comes into the state, Montanan patients can take advantage of it, and Ken, maybe you want to speak a little bit about the veteran side of it, or the 2% back. But it's really across the board. So to answer your question, Jesse, I think if some of you have family members who have a certain rare disease or a certain illness or a certain indication that hasn't been necessarily treated, there's a reason to start talking to people in the community to say, hey, when one of these clinics open, maybe you can talk to company X in California and they want to bring their phase 1 in here because, my neighbor's daughter has whatnot. There's a real opportunity for anything. So it's not specific, quite frankly.
And one of the things that I find most interesting is that you don't have to have a terminal diagnosis to take advantage of this. So maybe you have an eye condition, so you're losing your eyesight. That's not necessarily terminal, but it's not fun to be losing your eyesight. So there's opportunities for companies like that for non-terminal indications, correct? And
I think that's the most important thing. I think New Hampshire has a similar bill that specifically says terminal. And so, what defines terminal? I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's important to say, hey, I have AMD or an eye degeneration disorder, and to say I want to get help, and what's the standard of care now on the market is not clearly working. I want something that has been already tested in the labs in animals for 10 years and has been approved by the FDA to go into phase 1. If you're approved by the FDA to go into phase 1 clinical trials, that means you're safe enough and effective enough to meet a barrier. And that's why it was so strategic to put that into the bill, because there's already been that first level of validation by the federal government. But, phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, despite the fact that that costs $80 million, $100 million for a pharmaceutical company to do, means 10 years. And so if I have an eye disorder that I want solved next year, I don't have time to wait 5, 10 years for that drug to come out. And so that is what the opportunity is. It can be anything, and to come into these clinics. And really, it's a greenfield opportunity. So, I don't think we know exactly how it's going to shake out, but I think it's going to shake out positively for the patients and perhaps for the extra investment that's going to some of our communities.
I do want to talk more about that through the perspective of the genesis of the bill in helping local Montanans and having them be able to keep them in their local small businesses longer, to keep them on the farms and ranches longer, because they can get treatment for a chronic illness that may have taken them off previously, is very important. And in the bill, as was mentioned, there's a fund created that 2% of profits from these experimental treatment centers will go to a fund that Montanans, resident Montanans, can take advantage of to get free health care through the SB 535 for experimental treatments.
That's fantastic. So I think one thing that's always a question on people's minds, and definitely a question on legislators' minds when you pass a piece of legislation, is it going to have the intended effect? So do we think this is real? Are you guys hearing from companies that are actually talking about coming here? Will we have someone?
Well, I just noticed somebody waved to me in the crowd. There is a company here that, is not from Montana and is here to hear about 535. Someone I didn't know would be here. So yes, I think companies are going to take advantage of this. I think you'll see a lot of, I've heard from dozens, if not 100 CEOs of small biotechs saying, how do we do this? How do we get to Montana? How do we get into these clinics? And really, we're just waiting, and we appreciate very much, Governor Gianforte and HHS for the rules to come out, because we want to follow the rules, or these companies want to follow the rules. And when the rules come out, I think you're going to see a floodgate of companies from the East Coast, from the West Coast come here. And ultimately, I say it's for patients to take advantage of, but you also have to think of the trickle-down effects from a tourism aspect too. If you have an experimental treatment center here, of course, Montanans can take advantage of it, and that's the goal. But you're going to have people coming to Montana to try these experimental treatments because if you're in, let's say you're in Connecticut and you don't have access to this, of course you're going to come to Montana to try to do that because people are currently going to Cabo or Mexico or something like that. And I think our job as a community is to evaluate those coming in and make sure that these are the highest standard opportunities. And really, I think we're going to have like the top 10% of opportunities in Montana, and it's going to, I don't know, maybe in a decade, we're a biotech hub like many other states, and that'd be amazing for Montana, quite frankly.
So the bill was passed in April, and I already have a significant list of people that have reached out with interest, whether it's patients, doctors, biotech firms, investment firms. So I'm very excited to see what the rules provide and have those people come in who said they were interested. Very exciting, just the array of people that have interest and want to utilize the law and make Montana a leader in healthcare in the country.
How big is that list?
It is pushing 100 now. So will everyone come? I don't know, but a list of 100 people in, I don't know, 7-8 months, I feel is pretty good.
And I think in addition to that, I focus primarily on the company side. So I work with biotech companies and pharma companies. So that's the visibility that I have. I have heard from dozens who are interested and really want this opportunity. And just one quick plug that we're doing at the Montana Bioscience Alliance, which is a trade association for the biotech companies in Montana and for those outside Montana. We are doing a big push here to bring in companies to really do tours and introductions to what's going on. So if you know folks from out of state or even in state that are interested or have heard about 535, there was a Wall Street Journal article, there was an Atlantic article, it's on the national landscape now. Talk to your friends who are in the community, talk to patients. People know about interesting therapies and companies, and tell Ken or tell me or tell Jesse. Jesse's very involved in this. And we just want this to work and be beneficial to patients, to business, to more jobs, high-paying jobs that are biotech related. I think it's just a win-win overall.
Yeah, and this is what really gives Montana the advantage, is that we're first in the nation. And once the rest of the country sees how well we're doing it here, we're going to have competition. So we want to bring those people in once these rules come out early, and that we can make it a successful program. That we do want the rest of the country to adopt it. That's the intent. And for the federal government to then do the same. But we want to take advantage of that first movers and make Montana a leader.
I was just going to say, that's an amazing opportunity for the state and for any medical researchers, hospitals, other healthcare entities. It's very exciting. So I think one thing that I wanted to shift to is we've been talking a lot about the rules, and everybody is like, what are the rules? There are obviously legislators in the room and lobbyists and some folks that we recognize that know a lot about the process. Once a piece of legislation passes into law, the rules are the what's next. I know that Ken mentioned we had to operationalize the ability to take advantage of the right to try under this piece of legislation. So do you want to talk about maybe the current status and what the rules are attempting to do to the extent that you know?
So we are currently waiting for the Montana Department of Health and Human Services to come out rules that lay out how an experimental treatment center can get licensed. And once those are out, there'll be a public comment process. And once that's completed, it will go to our legislative interim committee, a legislative interim committee, to get approved. Once that process is done and the rules go in effect, then essentially the law is in effect, as everyone is waiting for these rules before they come in, so they're not making investments that they don't know what they're investing in until they have clarity on what is allowed in the rules. So that's what we're waiting on right now. Hopefully this month, I don't know, but there's a lot of people watching, but I don't want it to be rushed. Even if it doesn't come out soon, it's very important that these rules are done right. because there's a lot of people watching, the rest of the country is watching, and a good rollout ensures success into the future, and that we can continue to build on this law and not see it go away.
Yeah, and I just want to point out one word to use, clarity. I mean, from the business community, all companies want is clarity to make an investment, a significant investment or a license. So, we patiently and await the right type of rules coming out of HHS, but that's really going to be, once that is out, the comment period is over, you are going to see from, groups like the Chamber or Montana Bio, you're going to see dozens, if not hundreds of companies starting calling us saying, okay, how do we do this? And the next step will be to build these clinics, right? And there's a couple who have come in and who have rented space, but I think it's also, for the hospital representatives in the room, these hospitals can take advantage of it as well. They can have an experimental treatment center in their hospital if they like, and some have been talking to some companies. I just think it's a very greenfield opportunity, and it starts when the rules come out.
That's really thoughtful, Senator, to talk about doing them right versus quickly. I know some folks are kind of chomping at the bit to take advantage of this opportunity, but I think that it's good patient protection as well to be thoughtful in how this is rolled out. What is the most exciting part of this for you personally?
I believe the U.S. healthcare system needs some major reforms. And it seems like the federal government always, well, I shouldn't say always, but usually nips around the edges. And what's exciting about this for me is that it's thinking about healthcare in a different way and shaking things up, that people can get the healthcare that they want or need as long as they're eligible, which is they know what they're signing up for, and that they can get what they want, where there's not, I don't want the bureaucracy to get in the way of preventative care, or how hard it is to get care for people to not take their health care seriously in a preventative manner. And this would allow or encourage preventative care and maintenance of your body before things got to a point where you're now terminal. And so that's what's exciting about this to me is that preventative healthcare piece.
That is exciting, because there's a lot of opportunity on the patient side, is what I'm hearing you say, in addition to on a biotech company side as well.
Yeah, I mean, I want these companies to come in and invest in Montana's future, but why I brought the bill and why I mentioned in the beginning is to keep Montanans healthy and on their family farmers and ranches longer, and working in their small businesses longer if they want, for that next generation to take over and carry on the traditions and values of Montana.
Fantastic. So Greg, open-ended question, what do you find the most exciting, kind of being in your position from your side of the coin?
I've done biotech most of my career and a lot of government affairs in biotech, and in Montana, both in Washington, D.C. and in Montana. I don't think I've seen such an injection of excitement from a national level into the Montana biotech scene since this bill. The top has been blown off in opportunity, and it's just, I think this is going to be the most transformational year for the biotech community, the biotech ecosystem in Montana because of this bill. And, what this bill is drawing is not big pharma, right? Pfizer, GSK, some of them may come in. What this bill draws are experimental treatments. Those small companies that are in the news from time to time who have a phase 1, who are going through the process, and there's thousands of these companies. These companies you've never heard of who have an experimental treatment that came out of the University of Nebraska to do something for an eye disease or for a cancer. Those are the companies that are calling. Companies you've never heard of that are super exciting and really going to, beyond helping patients, beyond coming to Montana, are going to build roots here and promote the biotech economy and the biotech ecosystem.
And as this bill went through and I started hearing more and more about the uses and who is interested, in talking about the smaller companies, as AI ramps up, some of these treatments and phase 1 approved drugs could really be accelerated on what is being tried. And so this will give people access to the market quicker if AI is advancing these technologies fast, and we can get them to market soon.
It's a very exciting opportunity. I'll give you guys one last chance to tell the audience anything that I didn't ask you in a question, and then maybe we'll open it up to questions from the audience if anybody has any.
Okay. It's not too late to get on board. As I mentioned, we're still waiting on the rules, but there is going to be a huge opportunity here. You all have the opportunity to get on board, to take advantage of the law, to support it, to help me. With any brand new law across the country, there's probably going to need to be some tweaks here and there. So I would appreciate any comments, any discussion around the bill, how it can be improved. So pay attention, and would appreciate any support.
Yeah, I would just, I'd echo Ken that, Ken, you've been obviously you passed the bill, but you have been sort of the linchpin of a lot of this. And so we don't know what we don't know in terms of our community, in terms of, who's sick, what issues are out there. So it's a call to action, I think, for the community to say, hey, talk to Ken specifically and to Jesse or to myself or to the chamber, to Montana Bio, because we want to know how we can steward this legislation, the implementation of the rules, to help the community the best, right? This is, again, a blank slate to some degree. And I think we all believe, personally, and we've talked many times, that we need to do this right. And so the only way that we know how to roll this out right is from hearing from folks who know patients, who know companies, who know how it works, and asking questions, because that's how we do it best. So again, just a call to action, and thank you for putting together the panel.
Thank you, guys. Does anybody in the audience have any questions? Representative Perry?
So, when a patient comes in to the program, then thank you. So when a patient comes in and they're in an experimental program, then are they like ongoing part of the data research for that drug or for that procedure going forward? So, and if that's the case, how do we make sure that people are comfortable being, say, the experimental piece to that?
Do you want to talk about trials?
Sure. That's a complicated part of this, right? Because the FDA is a federal organization. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 clinical trials are registered with the FDA. So I think it's still an open question whether an experimental treatment center can fit into this national framework of clinical trials. And simply, probably from like an insurance liability standpoint, there are CROs, which are contract research organizations, that do clinical trials. Montana is now, and one or two other states are a little bit of an outlier because of the experience. You can still get a phase 2 in Montana, from any of the universities, certain hospitals here, that fit into the FDA framework. The point of Right to Try, as I believe it and why it passed, is that the pharmaceutical companies get to decide if you can join that trial. And that's about getting the data right. And that's fine, and that's their prerogative, they're investing in that. The difference with Right to Try is that as an individual patient, I can say, I know the liability, I want to take this drug outside of the trial. And being outside of the trial means that and it's very complicated from a biotech CEO standpoint, but being outside of the trial is fine for the patient and ultimately fine for the company, because what's happening with these small companies is that they don't have enough money because their data is not there. So if you have folks who are taking your drug, you can then find out data like, hey, listen, this actually worked. And I can go to an investor, after that patient is healed and say, hey, I only have 10 folks in Montana, but my drug is working. You should invest and let's do a national trial. And that's sort of the difference. So it's a yes and no. We may be involved in the framework, but I think in the beginning it is outside of the scope. However, it's palatable and interesting to the small companies because there's new data that doesn't have to be a 1,000 person phase 2 clinical trial that costs $50 million. Not to be too complicated.
Are there other questions? Going once.
There's one.
Oh,
Brigida.
Yeah, we'll go you first. Hi there. My question was about, again, like thinking like ahead. I know there's still work being done, all that kind of stuff, but like, what could specific like cities, city governments, like local, towns and regions across Montana, how could they start preparing to bring those businesses in and like setting up some of those foundational things that they might need to support those businesses to let them, once the things are kind of figured out, to just get up and running quickly within those areas and bringing that business to that city?
I'm assuming the rules, I haven't seen them, no one's seen them, are going to have requirements for the type of building that an experimental treatment center has to be. So, just making sure that you have the right zoning to do these and that there's a process to change the zoning easily if need be, I would say would probably be number one. I haven't seen the rules, but that's where my assumption would be.
Yeah, I agree. Until the rules come out, I don't think we know exactly, but the infrastructure is there, having the right code and standard, for these clinics, labs, and hospitals, which, most of the companies in Montana do already. So, I think adhering to federal standards in terms of cleanliness, FDA standards, clinical trials, that's the most important thing.
Senator Bogner, thanks for bringing the bill forward. So this might be a question for both of you, and I think you just started to touch on it a little bit in that last question, but Greg, when you spoke, you were talking about clinics, kind of taking root and where these licensed technologies would be delivered to willing patients. What about manufacturing? I don't know that I've really heard you talk about that. Maybe like small scale manufacturing, compounding, or I don't know. What do you imagine? Question for both of you.
So I think there has been a question around manufacturing and whether or not it's in the bill. Do we know the clarification on that?
The bill itself did not address manufacturing of particular medications or therapies. It's something that the bill is silent on. So my understanding is that at this point in time, any manufacturing would have to adhere to federal regulation.
And on that, and so I think that's the genesis of the question, because originally there was some thought to creating manufacturing to support these clinics in Montana. But as you can assume, making pharmaceutical products is very complicated, and you can't just build a factory, next year and then support 7 different indications in Montana. So what I do think, Brigida, that what will trickle down is a need for smaller manufacturers to support these clinics. And you use the word compounding pharmacies. We're thinking of contract research organizations who help you make these pharmaceutical products. And when you hire these groups to make them, you're only making 50 doses, right? Because in a phase 1, you have 50 patients. We're not thinking, a vaccine scale manufacturing opportunity. So these are highly specific projects that are done one-off for a clinical trial. So I do think that there's an opportunity in Montana for a smaller scale operation, a compounding pharmacy, to then start supporting these clinics. I think that will be the next step after the clinics open.
I agree. I think that that's maybe some future legislation that addresses manufacturing or specific tweaks to manufacturing, if that is where the industry is going once it gets established in Montana. But that's maybe a 29 play for Senator Bogner.
Yes, there will need to be some tweaks to the law. Like I said, when you have a first of the nation policy, it's hard to cover everything. So want to make sure, and as I mentioned earlier, please reach out, because there are issues like that where we just need to clarify so that we know, the department knows how to move forward with enforcing the law.
Thanks. All right, I'm on here. So Representative George Nikolakakos, I actually really like this bill. I had the privilege to carry the first version on the House. That one was smoother sailing. This one got a little bit of turbulence at the end there on the House floor. But one of the things I was interested, I remember the first time I saw this bill, was the potential for maybe psychedelic use. I'm a veteran. I know that Ken's a veteran, and some of those experimental uses that are in phase one. Some of these things are really vague in here. Even having read the bill, this bill came to the Human Services Committee both times, if I remember correctly, and I still couldn't get a clear read on that. Is there potential for that? It seems like it to me, if I remember correctly reading the bill, and just wondering about your thoughts on that.
So first, again, thank you for your support, and Representative Nikolakakis was very instrumental in getting the first bill past the House. We had to get 2/3 votes to do that, so not an easy task. He made it happen. With the way the law is written, is if it's phase one FDA approved and that an individual meets the requirements to use the law, then I would say yes. Again, still waiting on the rules and what they say. So to be determined, possibly. I hate to give a political answer here, but we are waiting on the rules and how detailed they are in what they allow for. Do you want to add to that?
No, I think you're right. There's a couple things that have to happen first. You have to be eligible per the bill to be able to use it. The medication or therapy has to be proven safe for humans. And then you have to have somebody that is at a licensed experimental treatment center that's offering that therapy. So while the sky is somewhat the limit, you still have to have all of those stars align, if you will, for it to actually be available to individuals.
And you do have, so as a veteran myself, I do know some of the psilocybin requirements for people who prescribe, and you have to have a federal license to do that. And there's not many in the country. It's very rigorous to get one. And so you'd have to have one of those before we even get to that point.
Any other questions? Representative Perry?
So Ken, you mentioned that you're looking for, or we're going to be experiencing competition pretty quick. So what kind of a time frame are we looking at in order to make sure that Montanans really do get the first benefit of this?
So, where did you mention had done a similar?
New Hampshire,
New
Florida, and I think Texas is trying it too.
Have seen what we did here with the first bill. New Hampshire's isn't as strong as what we did in the first bill. Arizona had done some stuff previously around right to try, but not as much. But other states are seeing what we did, and the interest in coming in and investing in Montana and what those dollars can look like. So those 5 states are gonna, as we go into session with other states around the country this year that aren't biennial, we're gonna start seeing some of these laws. But I will say, again, let's not rush this. It's important that we do this right. And so I would like to see it, done soon, but I'm not pushing. I wanna make sure that everyone's comfortable with the rules and that it is a success when it rolls out, so those other states can look to us and copy us, which then lead to federal policy getting changed.
I think that's right. I think with this in particularly, you're starting from literal ground zero. There is no other state that has rules like this. Everybody's looking to Montana. So you're creating a program from nothing, which is a big lift for the Department of Public Health and Human Services. And my understanding is they're also approaching it from a let's do this right versus just doing it quickly standpoint, because they want to make sure that there's going to be adequate protections in place for patients. Companies are going to have a clear roadmap on how they go about doing this because there's liability on that side. So hopefully within the year, the program will be up and going, and we'll have to see what some of these other states do after us.
Jesse,
Quick question.
Yeah.
As we finish up, a lot of references have been made to rulemaking and rules. If someone is interested in following and engaging in that process, how do they do it?
That's a great question. Montana Bioscience Alliance has put up a webpage about Senate Bill 535, where when the rules are released, there will be notice published on that website. You can also go to the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services website and sign up to be an interested party to receive notices of rulemaking. When the rules are released, a draft comes out, and then the department opens up a period of public comment that is usually at least 30 days. So you can either attend a hearing in person and offer verbal public comment, or you can submit written public comment, which the department has to take into consideration. So that's through the formal process. As Senator Bogner mentioned, the rules package will also go in front of the Children, Family, Health, and Human Services Interim Committee most likely, because the department has to notify the committee when they're coming out with new rule packages. So there would be an opportunity for public input there.
And I mentioned I have a list pushing about 100. If you email my legislative email, I'll add you to that list. I give periodic updates whenever there is one. It'll be a lot more frequent once the rule's out, but just email me, say I'm interested, and add me to your list, and I will.
Yeah, and thanks, Jesse. Just to repeat, Montana Bio, this is our focus this year on 535. There's a landing page. You can put in your name, email, company, and we'll put you on our list, and happy to chat with you as well.
One last question, yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Are you involved in the rulemaking process right now? I mean, it sounds like maybe not. And I mean, once the department, in my experience, once departments draft rules and put them out, it's hard to get them changed.
I haven't been in constant contact by law. They are supposed to reach out to me, and I have submitted my thoughts, what I'd like to see in the rules, more from a general, as like I mentioned, I'm not a healthcare expert. So I've given them my intent, what I would like to see, what I would not like to see. I have trust in them. We'll see what they come up with. But you're right. Once they're out, it is tough to change. But I feel comfortable with what I've given them and hope to see that those are adopted.
All right, with that, we will wrap this up. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you, too, for your information. Appreciate it.